guys, it's me, AJT, but you can call me Nick, and that's right, we are back. And we are playing some more Danganronpa 2 by Despair. So yeah, up to the class trial. So yeah.
But why did the killer go to all this trouble in the first place?
Based on what we know, I see!
Get that health back.
The reason the killer imitated 2 of the murders from the movie was so he'd mix up the killing order.
Then Hiyoko was actually killed before Ibuki?
A valid line of reasoning.
Yeah, it's valid. The condition of Ibuki's body suggests that as well.
What do you mean? If you're going to cry and beg like that, then I guess I'll hear about the condition of Ibuki's body.
I'm not even crying.
I'll let you sob as much as you want later. Just hurry up and tell me before I change my mind.
What a jerk!
Oh, I see. You want me to explain it to you, right? Because you don't understand what I'm saying, right?
An even bigger jerk? Impossible!
Look, Ibuki died because she hanged herself, right? That means when she was still alive, her feet were touching the floor.
What's wrong with that?
But it seems Ibuki was still standing when Hiyoko was killed. That would mean Hiyoko was killed before Ibuki.
How light. Your words are so light as the sylph's feather. Your opponent is out of your league. It is...
Man, he's being annoying again.
Yes.
First and foremost, you claim Ibuki's feet were touching the floor when Hiyoko was killed. How can a low-class creature with no psychic abilities like you know something like that?
Because she was doing something that's only possible if her feet were on the floor.
It seems you suffer from a pathetic delusion.
You're one to talk!
It's the candle, right?
When Hiyoko died, Ibuki's feet were on the floor.
I am telling you to present your evidence.
Did you see her walking?
If her feet were, was there any sign she stepped on something? Were there even any footprints at the crime scene?
Maybe her feet were on the floor, but she was like sitting, so instead there'd be a
Weak. It doesn't even pierce my heart.
When Hiyoko died, Ibuki's feet...
I am telling you to
Did you see her
If her feet were... Was there any sign she stepped on something?
What? But that was some agreement.
When Hiyoko died, Ibuki's feet were on the floor. When Hiyoko died, Ibuki's feet were on the floor.
I am telling you to present your evidence.
Did you see her walking?
If her feet were on the floor, was there any sign she's... Were there even any...
Maybe her feet were on it, but she was like sitting or something. So instead, there'd be a mark on her ass.
Oh no, mister.
Weak, I say! It doesn't even pierce my heart.
When Hiyoko died, Ibuki's feet...
I am telling you to...
Did you see her walk?
If her feet... Was there any sign she's... Were there even any...
Maybe her feet were, but she was like sitting. So instead, there'd be a mark on her ass.
When Hiyoko died, Ibuki's feet were on the floor.
I am telling you to present your evidence.
Did you see her walking?
If her feet were on the floor, was there any sign she stepped on something? Were there even any footprints at the crime scene?
Maybe her feet were on it, but she was like sitting. So instead, there'd be...
Weak. It doesn't even pierce my heart.
I don't like condoms like this.
When Hiyoko died, Ibuki's feet...
I am telling you to...
Did you see her walk?
If her feet were on... Was there any sign she stepped...
I agree with that.
Just as Sonia said, Ibuki stepped on something. That something was blood. There were faint bloodstains on the soles of her slippers.
That is not Ibuki's blood, right? She suffered no external injuries.
Then it's Hiyoko's blood!
Hyoko's only wound was a fatal slice on her neck. And she died almost instantly, right?
If Ibuki stepped on her blood...
It means Ibuki was still standing when Hyoko was mortally wounded. Which means Ibuki was still alive at the exact moment Hyoko was killed.
Don't underestimate the power of the evil eye!
Sword fight, let's go.
Is that it? A shepherd dressed in his Sunday's finest still reeks of lamb, Hajime Hinata.
Does that mean you have a rebuttal?
Does that mean you have a rebuttal? That's a good one. But are you sure you're sure? You're so frightened you can't even make a sound. It seems you've realized our difference in status. However, the time for conviction starts now. You better entertain me to the fullest.
Alright, piece of crap, let's go. Lock this.
You're saying the blood on Ibuki's feet. Ha! Impossible! Try to remember the crime scene. There was no... You can't step on blood that was never... Just see a nice nightmare. You're saying the blood on Ibuki's feet. Ha! Impossible! Try to remember the crime scene. There was no blood on the floor. You can't step on blood that was never there. Just see a nice nightmare.
As long as Ibuki's body has no open wounds, there's no doubt that that blood is Hyoko's.
Hyoko was taped to the pillar, yes, but it's possible that the pillar still had blood on it. However, you cannot step on the... You should feel it's been nearly 3 years since I've had to use 60% of my power.
Damn it!
You're saying the blood on Ibuki's... Ha! Impossible! Try to remember the crime scene. There was no blood on the floor. You can't step on blood that was never there. Just see a nice nightmare.
As long as Ibuki's body has no open wounds, there's no doubt that that blood is...
Hyoko was taped to the pillar, yes, but it's possible that the pillar still had blood on it. However, you cannot step on... It's been nearly 3 years since I've had to use 60% of my power.
What?
Hyoko was taped to the pillar, yes, but it's possible that the pillar still had blood on it. However, you cannot... It's been nearly 3 years since I've had to use 60% of my power.
What?
Damn it!
You're saying the blood on Ibuki's... Ha! Impossible! Try to remember the crime scene. There was no... You can't step on blood that was never there. See a nice
I'm not
nightmare.
going very well.
You're saying the blood on Ibuki's feet belongs... Ha! Impossible! Try to remember the crime scene. There was no blood on the floor. You can't step on blood that was never there. Just see a nice nightmare.
Yeah, be careful.
As long as Ibuki's body has no open... There's no doubt that...
Hyoko was taped to the pillar, but it's possible that the pillar still had... However, you cannot step on the pillar with your feet. You should feel... It's been nearly 3 years since I've had to use 60% of my power.
What?
You're saying the blood on Ibuki... Ha! Impossible! Try to remember the crime scene. There was no... You can't step on blood that was never there. Just about... You're saying the blood on Ibuki's feet belongs... Ha! Impossible! Try to remember the crime scene. There was no blood on the floor. You can't step on blood that was never... Just see a nice nightmare.
Crap.
As long as Ibuki's body has no... There's no doubt that...
Hyoko was taped to the pillar, yes, but it's possible that the pillar still had blood on it. However, you cannot step on the pillar... You should feel proud. It's been nearly 3 years since I've had to use 60% of my power. Hyoko was taped to the pillar, yes, but it's possible that the pillar still had blood on it. However, you cannot step on the pillar with... You should feel... It's been nearly 3 years since I've had to use 60% of my power. Hiyoko was taped, and it's possible that... However, you can... It's been nearly 3 years since I've had to use 60% of my... You're saying the blood on Ibuki's feet belonged to Hiyoko? Ha! Impossible! Try to remember the crime scene. There was no blood on the floor.
Allow me to cut through those words!
Jesus Christ, that was hard.
That's not it. The reason there was no blood on the floor is because the killer wiped it away afterward.
Don't say such foolish things! You don't have proof of that at all!
Yes, I do. If you look closely, there's a streak on the floor where blood was wiped away.
When the killer tried to hide Hyoko's body, they probably cleaned the blood at the same time, but Ibuki must have already stepped in it, and the killer probably didn't even realize it.
The reason they wiped off the blood on the floor was so we'd mix up the order of the murders, right? Even if they're able to hide Hyoko's body, it'd be bad if her blood was left out in the open.
Plus, Ibuki's body was left out in the open, and it wasn't bleeding from any open wounds at all.
Hyoko's body was probably wrapped in duct tape to stop her bleeding. Actually, the bleeding will stop once the heart stops beating, so I don't think they had to go that far. Aside from Nikon, none of us were aware of that fact, so the killer probably did not know it either.
Maybe the heater was running inside the music venue so it would screw with Nikon's autopsy?
That's right! I didn't know the time of death because of the heater!
The time of death wasn't mentioned in the Monokuma file, just to keep concrete evidence from us.
Yep. Since we have all this evidence, there's no one else who wants to object, right? Then it's decided. Hyoko was killed before Ibuki.
It appears that it is wiser to retreat for now. Fine then. But regardless of good or evil, there's no deceit in upholding one's convictions.
Can't you just shut up and back off?
Now then, let us resume our debate.
Wait a sec. There's something I want to run by Monokuma first.
Huh? Again? Didn't something like this happen last time too?
Hey, if the victim actually committed suicide, what are we supposed to do?
The same as always. You have to vote for who the killer is. Think about it. A suicide means you've killed the most important existence of all, yourself. Unfortunately, that means there's no Blacken to punish, but I guess in a pinch, I can always punish Monami.
What do you mean? If the victim actually committed suicide?
Well, I mean, I understand Hyoko's death, but I'm wondering if Ibuki was really murdered. For example, it's possible Ibuki killed Hyoko.
That's totally impossible! Then she never would have killed her to begin with!
She was afflicted by the despair disease, remember? That means anything can happen.
But if Ibuki's the killer, she wouldn't have been able to falsify the sequence of the murders, right? After Hajime saw the hanged body, the killer had to be alive at that time.
Then she was alive! When Hajime first discovered Ibuki, she was just pretending to be dead. If she waited until Hajime left, that's when she could have made her move and mess with the crime scene.
She hanged herself! Remember? There's no fucking way she could have faked that!
Yes, she could
And
have.
if she was going to fake her death, I think she would... Her body would have been defenseless in that state. If anyone touched her, that alone would have ruined her plan.
I see. So that means there's no doubt that someone killed those two. I'm glad. Now I'm free to search for the killer.
What the heck?
There's still one more issue on my mind. If Ibuki didn't commit suicide, then just what was that video Hajime saw? According to that video you saw, Ibuki was by herself when she climbed the stepladder, right? Then does that mean someone forced her to do it?
Forced? Perhaps they used hypnotism or something?
I don't know anything about that.
Don't say it all proud.
Putting that aside, it seems obvious that the killer did something. So, maybe we should figure out who was able to do whatever that was. So, an alibi. Then our plan is to destroy the weakest alibi.
Since Hajime has seen the video, it is clear what time the crime took place.
But just to be sure, that surveillance camera doesn't have a record function, right?
It's a cheap-ass surveillance camera, you know? There's no way it'd have some kind of sweet recording feature.
Then, the video Hajime saw was actually right?
What time did Hajime see that video?
I saw it at the hospital, right before Monokuma's morning announcement, and I saw the body at the music venue a little after Monokuma's announcement. So Ibuki hanged herself right before Monokuma's announcement. And since we established that Kyoko was killed before Ibuki, that means the time that the murders occurred was before and during the announcement.
Then, we just have to find the person who doesn't have an alibi during that time?
Now then, I shall issue my decree. Let Operation Destroy the Weakest Alibi commence.
We can exclude the sick people like me and Akane, right?
And what about the others?
Right before the morning announcement, I was totally sleeping in my motel room.
I think everyone at the motel was doing that.
So everyone who stayed at the motel doesn't have an
What about you guys?
I was where I was supposed to be.
That's not an alibi.
Aside from those afflicted by, if nobody has an alibi, Operation Destroy the Weakest Alibi has failed.
We can exclude the sick people like me and Akane, right?
And what about the others?
Right before the morning announcement, I was totally sleeping in my motel room.
I think everyone at the motel is doing that.
So everyone who stayed at the motel doesn't have an alibi.
What about you guys?
I was where I was supposed to be, my own cottage.
That's not an alibi.
Aside from those afflicted by the disease, if nobody has an alibi then...
No, that's wrong! Hold on. Not all of us are missing an alibi. In fact, Mikan and I both have alibis.
You two have alibis?
Up until I saw that hanging video, Mikan and I were actually together for a while.
We even woke up together that morning.
Hey, what kind of situation is that?
I accidentally fell asleep on top of Hajime. Too much info.
Yeah, it's not like that. She just came to tell me Nagato's condition had improved.
And we went to the hospital together afterward. So we were together until right before the announcement.
I get it. You guys have alibis.
If that's the case, the killer must be someone else.
It's better if we think about it like that. The killer decided to falsify the murder sequence to hide the actual time of the crime anyway.
So it's inevitable that an alibi for both before and during the morning announcement would be very important.
It feels like Operation Destroy the Weakest Alibi has backed us into a corner instead.
But committing an imitation murder, is that really all it was? Faking the time the crime occurred by falsifying the murder sequence, hiding their alibi in the process? Was that the only reason the killer made both bodies imitate the movie? Are you saying there was another reason? I feel really bad for confusing you guys so much. That's how I feel. I think the killer had a completely different reason for falsifying the murder sequence.
Spend it already? That was pretty quick.
Hiya!
Stop it!
Hasn't even been 20 minutes and Australia's been suspended. And here's some chance time. Whoa, what's that? Yeah, then maybe the appeal time starts now. Huh? Appeal time? You're kinda hard. Your kind-hearted big brother is gonna give you the chance to reclaim your honor. Good luck to those jerks. Treat you like a red-headed stepchild's boss. That's 99% your fault. Well, you were whining. Your time's already running out, so please make your appeal something simple. About 30,000
disappointment.
I mean, pulling on me. I believe the class rock was suspended already. Oh, yes, please. Oh, now it's reopened.
I'm Monami. Once again, I've been put in such an unreasonable situation. Seriously, he's like the king of unreasonableness. Why did it turn out like this? We were supposed to have a fun, friendly school trip, but it turned out all bloody instead. No! This definitely cannot be allowed. That's why I want you to remember this. Everyone, do your very best. Don't lose to yourself. And don't forget to save frequently.
Thanks, Monami.
Huh. It suddenly got quiet in here.
Thanks to you.
Did I confuse you? If so, I wish I could die from self-loathing.
Man, this again.
If that's the case, it would have been just dandy. If that happened, the imitation would have been perfect. So why didn't they do that?
Well, it's against the rules to kill 3 people in the first place.
That rule is too harsh. I couldn't get killed because of that.
That
Right.
black is dead.
Even though we're calling it an imitation, the lion was actually pinned by arrows, right?
Yes. Not fake.
But Hiyoko's body was suspended by common household duct tape. Maybe they just used a common substitute because it was too difficult to imitate the arrows. Well, that's probably it, but that attitude is what makes this feel incomplete. If falsifying the murder sequence was the killer's plan from the very beginning, they should have taken steps to properly imitate it.
But if we never realized it was a half-assed imitation, their entire plan would have been completely useless.
What are you trying to say? Are you saying the imitation wasn't planned?
I'm saying, Hiyoko's murder wasn't.
What?
I understand that imitation wasn't enough, but aren't you making a bunch of assumptions? It's not just the poor imitation. There are also other strange details.
Strange details? Like what?
Chucky,
Like, for example, why did Hiyoko go to the music venue?
she wanted to see the mirror.
So, you're saying the trick behind Hyoko's murder is
Oh, I
hidden?
know why she
I have
went.
no freaking clue what you're trying to say.
However, this is getting quite interesting. My 4 dark devas of destruction are getting riled up.
I know why she went. She went to the mirror.
Why did Hiyoko go to the music venue? There's no way we'd know that!
Maybe the killer summoned her.
If that's not it, maybe she got abducted by...
No, she went of her own free will.
Or she was guided by the will of causality.
Why did she go to the music venue?
Maybe the killer...
If that's it, maybe she got abducted by the killer.
Alright guys, I'm gonna end the video here, so please do like, guys, subscribe, so you guys the next Danganronpa 2 Blood Spare video. Bye bye.